Claire summed it up really. We've been involved delivering the employability service sector, both award and certificate at level 3 for quite a few years now, and nearly all of our staff have gone through that training. And we started delivering that particular qualification for all the same reasons that we've just gone through there. And I think I can absolutely hand on heart testify that the morale and productivity of the staff that have gone through that training and the outputs, which quite simply means people's lives transformed, it is quite miraculous. I mean, we had some very, very poor performing teams on the work programme at some stages, all sorts of, all the normal problems that you would expect with quality compliance, performance management on those types of contracts. And we've seen the staff actually transform really through not just the training, but that acknowledgement that they are professionals, that they are actually worth something and they are delivering something that is of worth. So when we heard that there was to be a trailblazer, we are a levy paying employer, so obviously it was quite important to us, being a charity, that we make the most of our training and development funds, that we would be really keen to get involved to do that. And I make a bit of a joke, and you've sort of alluded to it. I really hope that one day in careers advice sessions in high school, you'll hear people say, "I want to be an employability practitioner," because at the moment that's said no one ever. So that's really why we got involved, and we were sort of in at the ground level, weren't we, Scott? So there was a sort of a handful of us at the first few meetings. And I too absolutely commend the IEP for bringing all of us together. It's been quite groundbreaking, the fact that we managed to get it done so quickly without too many arguments. So I think it's a really positive thing.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. So Claire next. What difference do you think this will make to both the sector as a whole and individuals working within it?
I think it's going to make a really massive difference. So what I really like about the standard is the flexibility that it offers. So with any apprenticeship standard, what happens is a good training provider will initially do a really good initial assessment to identify where that person's currently at, and what that allows you to then do is tailor that program to the individual. So somebody who might have already been working in the sector a little while might already have the knowledge, skills and behaviours, the competencies needed to do that, but not all of them. And what they can then do is, rather than the recommended full 2 years that we've recommended it would take to do that standard, they might only need 15 months, for example, in order to get through that. So I just really like the flexibility, because I think a lot of people, sometimes when they go to say, "Oh, I'm doing an apprenticeship or studying," there's sometimes that concern about getting the work done alongside the day job, with this whole 20% off the job rule that I know has a few people worried. But what's really great with this standard is it really does actually, they should be doing a lot of it as part of their job role anyway. So there's no necessary need for them to take lots of additional time, albeit certain time that they'll need to just prepare for their portfolio. But in terms of the difference that I think it will make on an individual level, is all that stuff we've talked about raising that level of professionalism. For somebody to go away and say they've got that level 4 apprenticeship standard, I think would be really great to have on their CV, particularly where we do have a sector that sort of grows and contracts quite a lot over the years as time goes on, with the coming and ongoing of contracts and with different governments, to continually have that, so we're not losing talented people either. I think is a really another valid point that we're not losing people from the sector, or if they do, as I said before, they're moving into other similar types of sectors where you have the same skills, knowledge and behaviours around the caseload management and that behaviour change element, so that they're still staying within public services, and hopefully come back into more specific employability stuff as and when the time arises. So I think that's a really great way in terms of actual retention from an industry perspective as well. So I think it'll make a good difference on an individual level in terms of the study and professionalism, but then I think it'll make that big difference on an industry level in terms of retention.
Okay, thanks Claire. And last but not least, over to Emma from Working Links. What are your plans for implementation? How do you think you will use the new apprenticeship and what advice would you have for others?
Okay, thank you. So Working Links is an apprenticeship provider and a main provider in its own right, but we're also a levy paying organisation, and we have quite a large levy pot still unspent. And a lot of the reason behind that is because we haven't had something suitable for a large proportion of our employability staff. So we've been looking at leadership and management, but the people in these roles aren't managing teams, they're managing caseloads, so they can't meet the standard. We've been working with our back office staff, but we still have a large proportion unspent. So for us, it's really important for our own staff to develop them, to retain them. We will be delivering it externally as well. Our preparation we've made already is I'm working with our head of employability to identify colleagues within the organisation for a pilot group once the assessment plan is confirmed. We're identifying those people now, and we're looking at how our programme's going to be built, but we see it as an excellent way to utilise our own levy. And by the nature of the contracts that our colleagues work on, lifespan can be short and they can move around through businesses. So we think it's a really good way to retain good staff, recognise the great work that they do and try and keep them within our business, because you'll know sometimes when contracts come towards an end, staff start to move around. But if you can invest in them and show them that you're buying into them and that you're going to give them an opportunity in something that, as Claire said, although it still can be moved around to another organisation, it's a really important way to retain them. So my advice to others would be, invest in it, look at it, support us and the group with promoting it and getting it out there, because there are a lot of levy paying organisations that can use their funds for this, and it will professionalise the sector and give some people some great opportunities.
Thanks, Emma, that's great, thank you, and thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, Claire. Are there any questions, please, from those assembled in this gathering? Anything that you want to, any burning issues or anything that you want to ask?
I've been in the industry for 15, 16 years, and my parents still don't know what I do. What do you think has been the biggest barrier to getting out the knowledge there of what the sector does and how important it can be? So why is it seen as, I don't know, a pass-through, unprofessional?
I think because in terms of other industries, it's actually still relatively new. You think of industries such as like engineering, as social care, teaching, law, any of those other ones, they've been around for almost, hundreds of years, some of them.
But yet, say the .com, that came through very, very quickly and became very...
Yeah. I think that's because of the technology aspect with it. But welfare to work probably is 30 years, maybe 40 years old within England. So it's basically an infant in compared to some other industries. So I think that has an element within it as to why it's not necessarily as well known. And I think also, as I said earlier when I was talking through the slides, is people don't necessarily pick it as a profession. People seem to fall into it. And therefore, because they fall into it, they don't necessarily follow a tailored career path like you would if you were going to go into some of the other well-established professions. And therefore, they don't necessarily have the qualifications. It's literally years of experience as opposed to something more substantial as being added to a role or being added to a professional list or anything like that. And also, I think added to that, the IEP is 4, 5? How old?
6 actually, but yeah, not
6 years old. So I think that adds to it. So only in the last 6 years have we actually sort of stepped up as an industry and said we're professionals in the last 6 years. So I think that's another element that comes into it. And I know what you mean, because when my friends ask me what I do, I just stick with I work in HR because it's so much easier to answer than going down the employability aspect. But I think there's also an element that we need to get better at talking about it ourselves, about us acknowledging ourselves as professionals. And I think we are, over the last 6 years, we've started to do that, but I think we need to do more of it and we need to get better at it as individuals within the sector as well.
Thank you, that's great. And I think there's also the politicisation of what we do. I think, there's real challenges in terms of the public perception, because there are many fantastic stories about delivery and how exceptional it is, and then there's one bad one every 2 or 3 years, and it just kind of dissipates the kind of level of of credibility that our sector has. And it is supporting and dealing with individuals that find it very difficult to move forward and create that element of independence, but also it's supporting in a very politicised way some of the challenges, and socially that's quite hard sometimes to get over the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I work for an organisation that has lots of different professions within it. So we deliver aged care, we deliver homelessness services, we deliver, childcare, all sorts of different things, all with professional elements attached to it. And really, it wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago, even internally, that I was able to promote this as an actual separate skill set. It wasn't the same as a support worker in homelessness, although there's lots of transferable skills. It's not the same as social work, although there's lots of transferable skills. But I think you're absolutely right. The fact that we're working within a sector that is subject to a lot of spotlight is challenging. So we get sometimes we get confused with being the job centre. Obviously, big public programmes like the work programme, which was a majority of most of our work for the last couple of years, had lots of negative press, had lots of positive press, but we didn't see much of that come through. And so we're almost, the fact that a lot of us contract or work with the Department of Work and Pensions, we kind of get lumped in with that whole thing. So people don't always want to be identified as one of them, which I think is a shame, and because we are all players within that sector, and there isn't any problem with actually providing support, whether you are part of the civil service providing that support or a private sector. So even internally, I had to work really hard to get people to identify my team as employability professionals in their own right. They weren't just another lot of people helping people. So I think Claire's absolutely right. We need to get better at ourselves saying this is what I do, and promoting and helping our teams to be able to say this is what we do.
This gentleman here.
Yes, just curious. It'd be great to see, or if it can be kind of put into, or if it is, or if it would be into sort of contracts for tenders and things. So, for example, a lot of recruitment for NCS programs where the big push is IAG.
Yes.
And it's created a lot of momentum just for the item. It's obviously very different, but it'd be fantastic to say tenders going in, your staff gotta have this qualification, because it will sort of build up momentum. So that'd be great to see. I'm sure it will at some point, but just more of an observation, I guess.
I think there are 2 or 3 things in that. I think the first thing is, yes, I mean that would in essence solve the problem overnight, but it's not something that the IEP aspires to anymore. There was conversation around making commissioning requirements to be members and at a particular level. But I think the apprenticeship standard is a real game changer in terms of what we're doing. Firstly, we have Matrix and Merlin as representatives on our Trailblazer group. I think that's significant because Matrix and Merlin will be looking at the standard alongside other qualifications and other routes towards supporting people to grow and learn in their workforce development plans as a good proving point of capability of that organisation. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, you're absolutely right. Commissioners are more and more interested in workforce development plans and the capability of individuals within those employed environments to commission services with people. And I can see that growing. I can see that through devolved governments as well and devolved regions. So I think the opportunity is there to make a significant difference now without holding commissioners and organisations by the throat and saying this is what's going to happen. And clearly, it's not. You don't even need a leap of faith to understand that if your staff are engaged, trained well, understand what they're doing, and are passionate and proud about what they do, they're likely to do a better job. And dare I say it, in a commercial point of view, they're likely to earn more money for you as an organisation. It's not hard to grasp. So, I think we're very, very close. And the Trailblazer standard, probably for the first time, this Employability Practitioner Apprenticeship is really the first opportunity to show that professionalism in a light that the general public and government will genuinely understand what it is. Even
just the name, I think, is a big jump for the sector. The fact when I've put it out, when we sort of floated a few ideas around to staff and we tested the water, the fact that people just could even at that point envisage themselves being an employability practitioner was a really big thing. They were like, yeah, we are. That's brilliant. So I think that will really help with the identification, and it's language that speaks externally as well, because we all talk in jargon within the sector, and you know, job coach, advisors, nobody's got any clue what that means unless we're in this room. But externally you say employability practitioner, straight away people will say this is someone who's professional, most likely qualified, and therefore it will lead on from it. And as you say, the fact that performance, I think what will come from this is performance that is really visible. I mentioned we were in a struggling supply chain, struggling within a supply chain, should I say, to then go very quickly within a year to be top performers with the same staff team. That's tangible, and commissioners see that.
I think the other thing that we need to be mindful of, I mentioned Merlin and Matrix, is that as representative bodies, we're working alongside the Career Development Institute and Careers England. So this is a standard that has been built at level 4 to enable careers practitioners to progress their careers to their level 6 advisor if they wish to do it. So there is no intention at this moment in time for, or they wouldn't be able to now because the standard is available also, but there was never an intention to develop a standard at this level within that part of the employability practice within careers. So for me that's really, really exciting that we're creating these career routeways and people are going to get choice about what they want to do. So both we've sealed off the entry routes and the exit routes for this, so you know, there is no problem with people doing customer service or business admin at level 2 and 3, progressing through to this being like kind of hub of that learning at that level, and then moving on to, you know, youth work, management, careers advisory service. I mean, anything you can think of that requires coaching and support and advisory capacity. So the opportunities for people through this are endless, and it may well be that there are markets or environments out there that we haven't even thought about where this could be actually used. And unlike some of the older qualifications, not necessarily ERSA, CSS, but within many different sectors, this is eminently more flexible.
What's the opportunity, you think, through this then to better engage JCP? Obviously we've been trying for a long time with the IEP, and I feel like this could unlock that.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it really is.
So back when we very first started the Trailblazer, we did engage with, I think the lady was within HR for the Department for Work and Pensions, and as we all know, public sector have quite a high target in terms of the number of their staff that should be on an apprenticeship. So when we engaged with them, we sort of explained what we were looking to do. So they all put all of their staff as a core basic on the level 3 operational delivery officer, I think it's called. And it's very, very basic and it's very transactional. And it goes along the lines of benefit payments, dealing with tax inquiries and things like that. So they go for that basic to begin with. So then what's the next step for their work coaches? What do they do after they've done that? Well, there's a level 4 qualification that they pay for. So City and Guilds have written something bespoke for them. So me and Scott sort of asked the questions, okay, well what's in that? And they said coaching, advisory, teamwork, communication. We were like, okay, well that's all in our standard. Would that not be something you'd be interested in? Because you're spending your levy rather than paying out additional money for this qualification. And although they were interested at that time, they were having to do a lot of work on some of the other standards in other areas within the business. So fortunately, at that time, they couldn't dedicate the work at the time that they wanted to. However, we sort of did say, you know, if you want to be involved, now's a good time in how you want to shape, if you want to be involved in shaping what that will look like. But they just couldn't dedicate it at the moment. But they have been kept up to date on the developments. They asked to be involved within that. And so far we haven't had any further engagement, but I think the fact that we were able to get in and have that conversation initially was a good start around that development for them. And I'd be very hard pressed when it comes to making sure they're meeting their target that they won't use it. I'd be very surprised if they continue to fork out for this qualification. Surely somebody who looks after their budget is sitting there looking at the numbers going, why have we not spent using the levy to train these staff up to level?
And one of the most unique and wonderful things about the development of these standards, wherever they sit, is that once a standard is produced, nobody can develop a standard that is similarly aligned. So, you know, I don't say this because I want to be kind of fighting with people or anything, but the career sector now has adopted this. It cannot develop a standard at level 4 because what the work that careers advisors do is of a very similar nature, or at least the core skills are of a very similar nature. DWP and the civil service wouldn't be able to now go and develop a level 4 for work coaches because the work that is done, the core elements of that work, are very, very similar. And there's lots of other different elements in the sector. So we do genuinely believe that this will be picked up by a number of different organisations and people on the periphery of the sector. But ultimately, they're only going to do that if the core base of the sector are using this and actually, you know, promoting it and taking it forward. Anything final before we finish, because I'm sure everybody wants to get into the conference?
Just a comment, Scott, just to say that I commend you and the team, you know, to get to where we got to, because it has been a journey, and I think people need to remember that these things, you know, don't happen overnight. It does take time. You know, I was around at the start of ERSA, and I struggled to get members for ERSA. We had 10 people, 10 organisations back in the day when ERSA began, and you think where they are now. And back to getting Job Centre Plus on board, I think they'll vote with their feet. I think you're absolutely right, there's a wave. And if, like seeing those organisations that have signed up for this and been involved in it, they will carry on with that. And it will get, you know, there, and we will get people involved, and we will become a profession where people want to join it and see a career by it. So I think you've done a great job. Keep it going. The only thing I'd say is don't dilute it, you know, because if it's worth having, it's worth working for. You know, I'm old enough to remember I did an apprenticeship. It took 5 years. So, you know, let's cut it short. Let's stick to what we're doing.
Thanks, Stuart. And I think the last soundbite is, you're absolutely right, alongside the Trailblazer development, the IEP is now starting to create a movement of people. We have very close to 4,000 individual members and very close to 4,000 other members who receive our services in a more passive way through their employer. So that's 8,000 people that are receiving information, are engaged at various different degrees every single week with the IEP. The movement of people on the ground, as it were, those individuals working with, is the most significant thing within this. And that gets to a level that people have to start to recognise that this is something that's worthwhile doing in a sector that's worthwhile having. So, thank you for that. And can I just say, just if you could give your thanks to Claire Illingworth from CTEC, Rebecca Keating from the Salvation Army, and Emma Barrett-Peel from Working Links. Thank you very much.